dream landing spots for Austin Eckler. You ready for this?
Yeah.
How about the Chargers? He's the #1 running back in fantasy. He's been unbelievable last year with the Chargers. So yeah, how about he just stays there? How about they keep him there? He's got a rapport with Justin Herbert. And I know they're gonna have a new offense coordinator, but whatever. That's the dream landing spot. Stop it. He's good. They're good. Keep him there.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. NFL free agency rolls on, and so do we. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher, and special guest Denny Carter. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. I love being here with you guys.
You know what? I have questioned everything you just said there, and I'll tell you why. First off, you said special. I think that's
special.
I think
only
generous. Generous. It was a
I'm a generous
adjective.
guy.
It's a generous adjective. And guest, like, Denny's one of us. Like, he's not a guest. I mean, like, he's here in person. He's here in person. Like, he's here. He is one of us. He is here. He is one of our NBC Sports colleagues. He's one of our Roto World colleagues. He's been on the show multiple times before. Connor Rogers. I'm just saying.
True.
Look, now the difference is that, like, he hung up the moo-moo, got on a train, and came here to be with us in person.
That's right.
Here, you know what I mean? Like, he got rid of the smoking jacket.
I was going to wear it.
You should have.
And I thought about wearing it as a part of the bit.
Right.
But I decided against it. I wanted to look somewhat casual along with the cool guys here.
Well, you're in a bar. Like, you don't often see, like, smoking jackets or like bathrobes in bars. You know, we're in a bar.
I think you've done a disservice to your own brand. This is like Patrick Mahomes speaking in a deep voice.
I sold out. I think that's what you guys are saying, and I'm ashamed a little bit.
I have to confess, I said special because one of my first NBC memories was I came in to host the show.
Sure.
Matthew Berry was stuck in traffic, and we got Denny on the line.
That's right.
To join the show with me.
This is true.
And I was a little nervous. I was doing a solo show, and at my first month at NBC.
It's an awful story as to why I was late too. I mean, like, without getting too far down that road, like I-95, which is the one highway that you have to take to get to Stamford, Connecticut, which is where we are, where NBC Sports headquarters is. There was a ridiculous tragedy that had shut down 10 miles of the freeway. Like, it wasn't like just like, whatever.
Bumper,
Barry's alarm didn't go off and he was running a little late. Like, I mean, it was just like, they shut down 10 miles of this massive highway that is literally the only way in or out of the complex. So, but yeah, Denny hopped on.
I did.
Denny saved me.
Denny saved
That's
you.
why he's a special guest.
Shout out to Y95 as well.
Yes.
Connor saved me.
A wonderful stretch of driving.
Really hell on earth.
We love her 95.
By the way, huge week. We're coming out of a huge week, and we're going to get to free agency news in a minute. But when we actually get to the free agent news, you'll see why we're taking a minute to get there. It's a little snoozy here in week 3 of free agency. But big weekend for one of us, and that, of course, is me. I met Tom Brady this weekend.
That's true.
Connor had some news too.
No news. Yeah, no news at all. I just got engaged this weekend. But I think meeting Tom Brady, getting engaged. Thank you, lads. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. You can't top that unless you also got married to Tom Brady. That would top that.
It sounds like you were close.
I have some news.
We're breaking.
He's single. There is the engagement photo right there.
The dog was Archie, the star
of
of the show, though, waiting for the ball to be thrown again. He has no time for the proposal.
And she said yes?
She did say yes.
Yeah, okay,
it took a second. I was like, so? And she was like, oh, yes. And then I picked up the ball and got back to playing with Archie.
So, 2 questions. It's a beautiful photo. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled for you and your fiance now. Take us through. So this is on the beach, obviously.
Yeah.
And you're wearing dress shoes on the beach.
Those are boots. But yes, it was cold on the beach.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
There you are.
The
There's the
hair's
happy
gone.
couple right there, Connor.
That was the giveaway. She was on to me because I don't do my hair for the beach. I wear a hat and a hood over my face when it's 35 degrees. But I did the hair, so she was on to me. But still a nice surprise, I think. A nice surprise. I guess it's remained to be seen, truly. It actually worked.
How long have you guys been together?
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
Yes, and we lived together during the pandemic, so like signed, sealed, delivered.
Right, exactly.
If you did that, you're good.
I agree. If you guys live together and you survive the pandemic, then you guys are, you guys are the kind of rock solid relationship like Tom and I have that I think will last forever. My new BFF. So quickly take us through it. So take us through this this engagement here.
Well, the relationship or the proposal? Because this would be a long show. We like long shows, but this could be a long show.
Where did you guys meet?
Well,
I don't know.
Number one, hiding a ring is a disaster, by the way, I learned.
Especially when you live with somebody.
When you live with them. And, I had to hide this thing in my home office. And they called me when I was at the Combine. And they're like, hey, the ring's done. And I'm like, well, I'm not in town, so you need to hold on to that. And I even lied how long I was at the Combine so they'd hold it longer, because I wanted nothing to do with this. Right. I wore that big, ridiculous sweatshirt so it could just fit in the bagginess of it without giving away. Because I'm a tighter jeans guy. It's not going in the jeans pocket. Huge problem. Huge problem.
I get it.
Tighter jeans. Yeah, me and Denny. Yes, exactly. I could have gone with the jacket like Denny, but that would have been a real giveaway on the beach.
Fair.
And I am a casual guy, as you can see. I'm the only man wearing a T-shirt on this set right now.
Well, it was a little weird when you rocked up to the beach with your hair done and wearing makeup. I thought that was
yes. That was probably a giveaway too for the photo shoot. Yeah.
No, and apparently a photographer.
My mom. Okay. Yes. Here was the master plot, though. I was able to disguise the getting down on one knee by bending down to pick up my dog's ball to throw it. And after I threw the ball, I just turned around and had the ring in my hand.
Look at you.
Very nice.
Quite the move.
There's more creativity in this brain than lets on. Yeah. Yes.
And this was all pre-planned.
It's all just not whey protein up here. I swear to God.
You were gonna do that. The
I figured that was the best way. And I'm not
right
I didn't want. There was no one around, which is my ideal.
Yes.
Everybody's like, why didn't you do it where you live in Hoboken or the city? And I was like, I didn't want people like, oh my God, this proposal. It was nice to not have any humans, besides my parents, which is how we got the pictures.
There you go. No. And your desire not to be seen by people is one of the reasons why you fit in well on this show.
Yes. Yeah, there's no one in the studio. It's just us.
Exactly right. Well, listen.
Well, thank you guys.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Your fiance's name?
Kristen.
Kristen.
Yes.
So Connor and Kristen.
Yeah. Kristen also, works in the industry a little different behind the scenes, so she actually could speak to football pretty well. She might be the fourth person on the set. Sorry, Denny. Or maybe sorry, me.
She's waiting in the wings right now.
Right, exactly.
Sorry.
No
a draft guru herself. Kristen, a draft guru herself.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So.
Is she available in the next segment?
Yeah.
Sorry, Denny.
So from death do us part to Miles Sanders.
I guess that's where we kick off. Hey, free agency reaction to running backs.
Really good segue.
Yeah, smooth transition.
You're not the best in the business for nothing.
Yeah.
Raheem Blackshear?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Crowded backfield now in Carolina.
Yes, that's what they say. So Carolina hands out.
Here's the way you do it. No. So it's now a singular backfield in Connor Rogers' home, obviously, right? You've gone with
not a committee.
No longer a committee. No. You've gone to a one-back offense, right?
Kristen's a bell cow.
Exactly.
Yes. She loves that nickname. I say, hey, you good for 30 touches today? Yeah.
Sure.
10 targets? Yes.
2021 Jonathan Taylor.
Yes.
Right. By the way, I ask my wife that all the time. Are you good for about 30 touches today? She knows it's not going to get there. It's going to be 15. It's going to be 15, maybe
Max.
12. We're going to get down big.
Foreman
Right. But yeah. So from a bell cow apartment or condo or house wherever you live to the Carolina backfield where Miles Sanders joins a crowded backfield.
Yes.
That was a much better segment.
Yes, that's how it's done right there. Miles Sanders hoping to be the workhorse in Carolina. Probably a long shot.
I apologize to America.
He goes from the Eagles to Carolina, 4-year, $25 million. Good money for Miles Sanders.
Good years.
Yes. Denny, let's look at the role here for Miles Sanders. We know this is where a rookie quarterback will be starting for this team, assuming they're going to take number one overall. The offensive line, though, on the come-up, some young players, an ascending offensive line. How do we project Miles Sanders in this backfield?
The Carolina offensive line was dominant for the second half of last season, and I think unless something changes in the next couple months, they should maintain some stability there. It puts Miles Sanders in a good spot to be an early down back, but there will be obviously a rotation, not like your marital situation. There will be, he will not be a workhorse in this backfield because you have Chuba Hubbard, you have maybe someone they're going to draft. Miles Sanders has no real usage as a pass catcher over the past couple of years. I think he had 23 targets all of last year in the Philadelphia offense. So I think he'll be a touchdown dependent RB2 at best. So if you can stomach that in the middle rounds, I guess you go for it. It's not all that inspiring though.
I have two questions for you, Connor. Neither are about Kristen. So one, are we sure Andy Dalton isn't going to start? And then two, what do you think about now the trend is that, previously the trend was Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, the rookie sits for a couple of years, then plays, and now it's much more thrown to the Wolves. And after what you saw with Zach Wilson with the Jets and everything, Do you think that trend is right, or do you think there's a chance it's Dalton?
I think it's dependent on who they take, right? Anthony Richardson is a guy that wherever he goes, which is going to be in the top 5, he should be awarded the luxury of sitting because he needs to. He didn't play a lot in college. When you look at Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, on the other hand, they're going to be drafted to play because teams are trying to maximize those rookie quarterback contracts. So I think that's what it'll come down to. It'd be a big surprise if this team takes Anthony Richardson. Yep. So it's looking like and it's great to have Dalton there. It's great to have McCown as the quarterback's coach. Really, so much veteran leadership for that young guy. But I think who they take at number 1, Stroud or Bryce, will ultimately be the week 1 starter.
Okay.
Yeah, it also depends on sort of what kind of offense Frank Reich wants. Like last year, they were crazy heavy, right? I mean, they were 6th in total running back carries last year, top 10 in running back red zone carries. Like we were talking during the season, like, is it a Chuba Hubbard weekend? Is it a Dante Foreman weekend? Turns out it was both. Yeah, right. I mean, they were both getting like 17 touches a game last year. So we'll see that now that Steve Wilks is out as interim head coach, and now Frank Reich is in, different offensive system. We expect them to, especially if they draft a quarterback number 1, that they're going to be at least balanced, if not more pass heavy, especially because we still don't think the defense will be as good. I think it will. I think losing Wilks is a loss for the Panthers on that side of the ball. Here's the other thing about Miles Sanders, right? And I wrote about this in my Combine column that is available on rotoworld.com, NBCSportsEdge.com. I'm a company man. And you'll see, like, a lot of the stuff that I wrote, a lot of the gossip I heard in bars so far has come true. And one of the points was, hey, Miles Sanders is going to move on, that we expect Miles Sanders to move on, that ended up happening. And that the talk that I heard from my sources in Philadelphia were one of the reasons why he was part of a committee in Philadelphia is he has trouble staying healthy. They don't trust him on third down. They don't like him in a pass-catching role, as Denny alluded to. And, oh, by the way, fumbling is an issue. Yeah. And so you think about Deuce Staley being there as a running backs coach who, wherever he's been in the NFL as a coach, he's also employed a multiple running back coach. Frank Reich he had Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, but he's still certainly, Nyheim Hines got more touches than any of us wanted him to. Right. I think the expectation, I feel like Miles Sanders, to your point about being super touchdown dependent, on an offense that, even though it's a good offensive line, I don't think it's not going to be nearly as efficient scoring-wise as the Eagles. And even though they may be run heavy, and I think the jury's still out on whether they will be or not, I don't know that he gets all those carries. I agree. I think they get either a veteran or they draft a day 3 guy.
Yes. It'll be his workload will be eaten from both sides. No pass catching role probably. Maybe he has to split the early down stuff. So where does that leave him? It leaves him a lot of empty carries. Like I said, he's going to have to score a lot of touchdowns to get there for fantasy.
And he has traditionally not been a touchdown scorer. He obviously last year he was, but
before that,
in previous seasons he just hasn't been. And so anyway, it'll be like the 4th year in a row that I'm out on Miles Sanders.
Yeah. I think with Frank Reich as well, he showed that I think deep down in Frank Reich's soul, he wants to pass the ball. And I think the Jonathan Taylor 2021 explosion, that was more an aversion to Carson Wentz than anything else, because Wentz, they just did not trust him at all. And when Wentz was playing well, they would throw it aggressively. I think back to the Tampa Bay game that year where they went against Tampa's number 1 run defense, and they threw it 20 times in a row. And it's this is what Frank Reich wants to do, whereas Kyle Shanahan wants to run the ball. So obviously that's going to be difficult with a rookie quarterback, but at the same time, I do think that he will want to pass.
Former NFL quarterback, obviously wants to throw. They're going to have a young guy that they're going to want to develop. Like C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young or Bryce Young don't get better by handing off. They need that. It's a development year for whoever they pick, and so that guy needs to throw. With the exception of Justin Fields, who was in that disastrous Matt Nagy situation, generally speaking, you let your rookie quarterback throw and learn from his mistakes.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence did it year 1, and they reaped the rewards. Different staff, but year 2, we saw a much improved Trevor Lawrence. So, speaking of the fear of committee guys, this is an interesting one. Lions signed David Montgomery. We knew they were going to lose Jamaal Williams in free agency. Montgomery gets a 3-year, $18 million deal. $11 million is guaranteed. So this is a really nice deal for David Montgomery. Barry, here's my question for you. It feels like now this is yet another summer we're going to enter DeAndre Swift not being one of the guys, as Montgomery is clearly going to significantly eat into his workload.
Dave Montgomery drives me crazy. And
just want him gone.
I do, and that's not going to happen.
No.
We wanted free Khalil Herbert, and now it's going to be free DeAndre Swift. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, David Montgomery is going to be underdrafted and be really productive.
Yes.
this year. And he drives me crazy. Again, like, I am not a David Montgomery fan. I'm not a David Montgomery guy. But the fact of the matter is that the Lions have one of the better offensive lines in football. They're going to have one of the better offenses in football. And they do not want DeAndre Swift, because of his health issues, touching the ball more than 10 times a game. He's going to get 8 to 10 high leverage touches, DeAndre Swift. And we'll talk about him as we get closer to the season. But you think about Jamaal Williams, who led the NFL with 17 rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't know that Dave Montgomery gets 17 rushing touchdowns, but double-digit rushing touchdowns are very much within the range of outcomes for Montgomery here. He's been a bit of a workhorse here. He's not a bad pass catcher as well. You can use him on all 3 downs. Like, I thought this was it is a good signing for Detroit. It's an annoying signing for us in fantasy, but this was a good signing, and he's going to be more useful than any of us want him to be.
To me, David Montgomery is like I-95. He's a necessity that you don't really look forward to, but it ultimately kind of gets you where you need to go.
Gets used every day, but you just don't know if it's going to be good or bad.
Exactly.
He is going to be one of those guys in drafts where, like, when you draft Dave Montgomery, you're with your buddies, you're at a bar like this, and you're like, Dave Montgomery. Like, literally no one's going to go, like, ooh,
No.
oh,
Okay, fine.
I wanted him. No one's going to do that.
Great
right?
take
Like,
in the chat.
when you take Bijan Robinson, that's what's going to happen. You'll get like, man, sleeper, I wanted him. Like, no one's going to say that. Everyone's going to be like, okay, Dave Montgomery. Find him on your list, mark him out. That's what's going to happen. But you know what? You're going to look up, and he's going to have 1,200 yards and like 12 touchdowns.
He's always among the least efficient running backs in the league by almost every metric, but he's a coach's guy. Coaches love this guy. He's a team leader. He's a rah-rah guy, and he has Dan Campbell, the ultimate rah-rah guy, as his head coach. I think they mesh really well, and it doesn't matter if he's not good. He's going to see a lot of touches.
That's my point.
And so people say, oh, well, he's not good. They're going to have to give the ball to DeAndre Swift. No, they don't. They've proven that time and again. Yeah. They won't do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all like Jamaal Williams. We're going to talk about his signing coming next. Like, we all like Jamaal, but DeAndre Swift on a skill level is one of the best running backs in the NFL. Like, he is just a special dude. And Jamaal Williams, as much as we all like Jamaal Williams, Jamaal Williams is not a special dude when it comes to a running back. And yet, time and time again, to Denny's point, they went to Jamaal Williams last year.
Jamaal Williams had 46 carries inside the 10-yard line last year. He led all running backs by 16. The next closest is Joe Mixon, 16 fewer. So if Montgomery gets at least 80% of that, that's an enormous fantasy workload.
Especially, by the way, on a team that we expect their defense to be better.
Yeah.
Like, we don't expect them to be down and chucking it a lot. Like, we think they're going to be more competitive in games, which means they're going to probably be running the ball a little bit more in the second half than they were previously.
Plus 135 to win the division.
I was going to ask you, the Lions are
heavy favorites.
Really positioned nicely in this division now.
Bears.
As we talk about, the Bears are the better bet in terms of the odds.
Yeah, David went to the wrong team.
You've been in Chicago too much lately.
I do like Chicago.
Yeah, it's starting to infect your brain. Denny, you brought up Jamaal Williams and his red zone usage last year, and he goes to the Saints on a 3-year, $12 million contract. Here's the situation with the Saints. We know Kamara could be dealing with suspension this year. He's dealt with injuries. But for Jamaal Williams, it's kind of hard to find a new ceiling considering the situation he was in with the Lions. So what is this for him and the Saints? How do you project him with the Saints?
First of all, I think it's good for Kamara whenever he plays because Kamara can get back to that in-space pass-catching role that he was so good at for years in New Orleans before they, for some reason, made him a between-the-tackles runner and kind of, it ruined his fantasy appeal. Yeah. That's just not his game. So hopefully Kamara can get back to that role. I will say Jamaal Williams will probably be overdrafted for my taste because people remember last year, remember the 17 touchdowns, remember, like I said, all those carries inside the 5, inside the 10. That's not going to happen again here. But if Kamara is suspended for, a month or more, then Williams probably will look pretty good at ADP if you are fading running backs early and looking, to sort of cobble together running backs late.
To me, that's the pro Jamaal Williams argument, right? Is that, you might get 6 weeks of RB1 production for a guy that's going to and we don't know when those 6 weeks will come, right? I mean, it might be the first 6 weeks of the season, by the way, but it might be the fantasy playoffs. Again, we just have no idea. I think the prevailing wisdom is that Kamara is likely facing a suspension. Again, they want to wait for the legal process to play out. The NFL has, but the footage that's been released of that incident, and listen, I'm no lawyer, obviously. I'm not even an analyst, but who knows what I am. But the fact is,
it's not good.
It doesn't look good.
No,
15
it does not look good. And so, at a minimum, I think the floor for Jamaal Williams is Mark Ingram's role in this offense, right? Like they don't want Alvin Kamara to be the between the tackles guy. So could he be like a squint and you can sort of see it usable flex in weeks in which Kamara is active, and you're hoping like a touchdown dependent flex.
Yeah, sure.
But there's the potential for 6 weeks, at least 6 weeks, because Kamara's obviously dealt with injuries over the last couple of years as well. There's the potential for 6 weeks of RB1 production. I will say this: I think Jamaal Williams goes somewhere in the he should be the first of the high upside backups. Like he should be, he should go before, last year where Alexander Mattison or Tony Pollard went. He should go before that range, if you will, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is that if you ask most football fans, like, where do the Saints rank in the league? Like most people say, they're like the 16th, 17th best type of team. They're also plus 125 and the favorite to win that awful division. Yeah. So they're going to be in positions where they're going to have more advantageous situations than you might otherwise think, just because they've got 6 games against the Falcons, the Baker Mayfield Bucs, and the Panthers.
Why does poor Baker Mayfield let me tune into Peacock? Let me see what's going on over here.
Stray
and
bullet.
then just a stray, why isn't the C.J. Stroud Panthers? Why isn't the Desmond Ridder Falcons? Why do I, Baker Mayfield, who's actually won a playoff game, why am I catching strays?
Just differentiating from your good friend Tom Brady and the Tom Brady Bucs, which are now no longer.
He's no Brady.
A new era.
My BFF.
He said he's no Brady.
Yeah.
He said I'm not Tom, and I'm glad he said that, because last year by most measurements he was the worst quarterback in the NFL. Baker
Wow. By most measurements, but not all measurements.
Not all measurements.
Stay through the break, Baker. It get a lot better for you. Another one here.
Anyway, but by the way, one quick question for my friends at Peacock that are watching this: why does Jamaal Williams not have a reality show yet? That's what I'm asking. Like,
Come on,
hey Peacock, let's make this happen.
Let's do this.
Like,
He's
give me
unbelievable.
Jamal Williams,
The most entertaining presser in the NFL.
I was just gonna say MVPC,
Kim
most
and
valuable press
Jair
conference.
Alexander as well. Maybe
Those two.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's hard to believe they're in the
there
same
you go,
locker room.
Peacock. Look, I'm doing your job for you. Do
Well,
a reality
I did it,
show
but yeah.
with Alexander and Jamaal Williams.
All right, the Eagles signed Rashaad Penny, a 1-year, $1.35 million contract, obviously due to the injury history that Penny has dealt with. But, Barry, he's one of those guys that he can go off for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on any given week. You just never know where it's going to be. But he does, obviously fall into a backfield that could be adding somebody in the draft. They like Kenny Gainwell. There are some different variables here.
I actually think my sort of feeling is that if I'm doing best ball drafts right now, like no one's paying attention to Rashaad Penny. I believe by the time we get to August, like he'll become such a trendy sleeper that he will be overhyped a little bit. But like, sky's the limit for Rashaad Penny. Really efficient offense, great offensive line, tremendous skill set. And this is a guy who, not last year, but the year before, won people their fantasy leagues. Like the fantasy playoffs 2 seasons ago, he was a top 3 fantasy running back. He might have been the number 1 running back in fantasy, was he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and so like he was just phenomenal. He's got a home run. He's got this home run ability. He's great out of the out of the backfield as a pass catcher as well. And so, look, Kenny Gainwell's a nice player, but like he's not the every down guy. And so I think it just depends if they get through the draft and they don't add like a star running back, and it's just I could see a scenario where they go into the season with Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and Rashaad Penny. And in that scenario, like, I'm all in on Penny. Yes, health is the issue. Health is the concern with him, but he's on a 1-year prove-it deal once again. He was good in Seattle last year before he got hurt. I mean, like, we all see how good Ken Walker was, and he was able to hold off Ken Walker until he got hurt. So at current cost, I'm all in on Rashaad Penny.
You go all the way back to 2019, and you look at Penny's healthy stretches, which are few and far between, I understand, and that's part of the reason I think his ADP will be so suppressed this summer. Even if he gets some sleeper hype, I think that it'll still be a reasonable price point. But yeah, Rashaad Penny, every time he's healthy, is among the most efficient running backs in the NFL. Again, last year, 2021, obviously was like a special 6-week run that we might not see again for a while. I mean, I looking at the numbers, you could say that when healthy, I know it doesn't happen often, Rashaad Penny is the best running back in the NFL.
He is the anti-David
pound
Montgomery.
for pound. He is, absolutely. But that injury history, people will be freaked out by that, and I'm okay with that. I think I can deal with it.
I think especially at ADP, he's very much worth a flyer. Like
Yeah.
he could have a huge year.
Yeah, and also he had that stretch in 2021 where he was outplaying Jonathan Taylor down the stretch. He was having a historic season, and he's doing that behind a pretty bad offensive line in Seattle. And now he gets the best offensive line in football. Like he's going to be someone who, like, we don't have markets on this up, but he's going to be like 150 to 1 to win the rushing title. Like that kind of ridiculous because everyone just thinks, oh, Rashaad Penny's on a 1 year, $1.35 million deal. He gets hurt all the time. Like, guys can just stay healthy for 1 year, and then all of a sudden, like, he could absolutely rush for 1,700 yards if he stays healthy.
Especially in a new home where they might understand his usage or how to time his usage a little bit better for an offense that is going to score a ton of points again.
It's going to score a ton of points. They have enough backs there that they can mix and match, and you've obviously got Jalen Hurts in the backfield as well, so defenses are going to have to account for that in a way that they didn't have to in Seattle with him. And so maybe that opens up some rushing lanes as well. Like we've often seen that running backs that play with very mobile quarterbacks often are more efficient as well, just because, again, you usually have to keep a linebacker spy on that quarterback. And so that opens up a lot of lanes when you have a creative play caller, which hopefully the Eagles will.
That's
this
a good
year.
point. Yeah.
Another notable signing here, guys. The Texans signed Motor Singletary, a 1 year, $3.75 million contract as he moves on from the Bills. I think, honestly, Denny, everybody's question immediately pivots to, will Dameon Pierce no longer be that workhorse guy in Houston?
I think we kind of got the rug pulled out from under us on Dameon Pierce on this signing. I was, I've been doing some best ball drafts. I've liked Dameon Pierce's ADP, not as much now because Devin Singletary was never used as a pass catcher in Buffalo, meaning that if they're going to use him at all, and I'm guessing they are, it's going to be on early downs, and that's going to really eat into Dameon Pierce's usage. Now, maybe Pierce is used more as a pass catcher. He wasn't bad in that role last year, but he was only seeing about 3.1 targets per game as a rookie. So I think that his paths to fantasy upside have been very much narrowed by this Singletary signing, unfortunately.
I'm not as worried about it as you are. Yeah. I mean, I think they really like Pierce. I mean, again, I'm a big follow the money guy. 1 year, $3.75 million. That's a depth signing.
It's not much.
And I've seen that's where it maxes out. A lot of these contracts.
Right, incentives and everything like that.
Especially running backs.
The fact that Singletary couldn't do better than that, to me, Devin Singletary is just a better version of Rex Burkhead last year. That's what he is. Like, I mean, they use Rex Burkhead here and there, to spell him and everything like that. And I think Singletary's more of a veteran, and so they're gonna have a young quarterback. They're going to want to have somebody who's good in pass pro, who's a good pass catcher, so that, like, when that quarterback gets in trouble, has somebody to dump off to. So I think you could see Singletary there. But am I worried about when they get on the 5-yard line, suddenly here comes Devin Singletary? Like, I'm not. Like,
Probably not.
I hear you that it maybe caps the ceiling on Pierce a little bit, but what did we think if this signing didn't happen, what did we think, like, Pierce's – I thought Pierce's floor was – or his ceiling was, like, running back 10.
Yeah. I think he could still get there if they limit Singletary's usage. But Singletary, like some of his peripheral stats show a guy who can be efficient as a rusher. Again, as a pass catcher, just horrible. One of the worst pass catchers. It doesn't make much sense either. It seems like he would excel in that role. But so I do worry a little bit about what it does for Pierce, but I'm not completely fading Pierce after the Singletary.
I think Pierce is a fine RB2, and maybe he doesn't have as much upside, but I also don't think the floor. I still think there's a very solid floor, especially given that they're going to have a rookie quarterback that they're going to want to,
establish.
They're going to want to establish it.
I think as well that Pierce, it's probably went a little bit under the radar, but he was used in the passing game more than you expect because the first 3 games was no passing game usage. But he ended up with 30 receptions, 39 targets in 13 games. He had, I think, 4 games where he had at least 5 targets, so he definitely does have that element.
Yeah, he's an elite pass protector, too, so they'll keep him on the field. And it helps. The Texans traded for Shaq Mason. They extended Laramie Tunsil. Like, this offensive line is actually in a good place for a team that is also going to probably be playing a rookie quarterback. Guys, here's the other.
I'll just go back. I think Singletary is a bigger name than threat. I think he was a depth signing. Honestly, I do. And that's what the money suggests to me as well.
A couple more of those exact signings, and you guys can pick out which one stands to you. Alexander Madison goes back to the Vikings on a 2-year, $6.4 million deal. We'll see what that means ultimately for Cook. D'Onta Foreman signs a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Bears as David Montgomery's out. D'Onta Foreman's in. Damien Harris signs a 1-year deal with the Bills. That one's kind of interesting. Raheem Mostert is back with the Dolphins on a 2-year deal. Jeff Wilson is back with the Dolphins on a 2-year deal. James Robinson signs a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Patriots after being phased out of the Jets' offense at the end of last year. And then Samaje Perine signs a 2-year, $7.5 million deal with the Broncos. Jay, looking at these, are any of these more noteworthy to you than the rest?
I think it's interesting with the Dolphins just because I like that team a lot overall, and I think they have huge upside. I think they can absolutely win the division. That team is absolutely stacked now with the additions they made on defense, most notably Jalen Ramsey, and then on offense. Like the Dolphins were really banged up last year. Teron Armstead was dealing with injuries the whole second half of the season. Tyreek Hill had the niggle with his ankle, and then Tua, obviously. Like they could be a juggernaut, and if they're a juggernaut, it means that they're going to be running the ball. And obviously you get Mostert and Wilson both back, but I think that they can both be usable. And then if one goes down, which probably will happen at some point during the year, then all of a sudden you've got a guy who could be a borderline RB1.
I agree. I mean, I think at least we know sort of what to expect with Miami, and I think it's going to be tough to rank one guy over the other each week. But I think both guys, to your point, are usable low-end RB2, high-end flexes on a week-to-week. To me, you mentioned it, to me the most interesting one here is Damien Harris. I think Damien Harris is a good player.
He is a good player.
Not being as good as or as versatile as Ramondre Stevenson is not a negative. Like there's a lot of running backs in the NFL that are good running backs. They just aren't as good as Ramondre Stevenson. And so, it does two things. Number one is I think Damien Harris could actually have more fantasy value in Buffalo than he did in New England, more explosive offense, and somebody that has sort of a very clear role. Like I'm going to be a pounder. And as they want to continue to extend Josh Allen's career, like maybe Allen's still going to always tuck it and run at some point, but like as they get in close, you could see him being kind of a hammer at the goal line here. It also caps when Singletary, we're like, ooh, James Cook season, and now we're like, Like to me, I'm more disappointed about James Cook than I am about Dameon Pierce with the Devin Singletary thing.
It's the same thing with Khalil Herbert in Chicago.
Right.
Like, I was really amped about Herbert, finally maybe getting something like a workhorse role because he's been so good when he's been the lead back, way better than David Montgomery. I think we've established that is possible for any running back in that offense.
Right.
So D'Onta Foreman has been good, and there's no two ways about it. He's very interesting to me as a late round flyer who could just end up as the lead back, maybe if Herbert struggles with injuries again, maybe if they just see Foreman as more of a lead back. The size factor, Herbert is not nearly as large as Foreman, and that offense, that Chicago offense, the run heaviest offense in the NFL last year, outside of Atlanta, of course. And so Foreman could have kind of hidden volume based upside there.
I think all of these signings, or a lot of them, they just go to show that it's just the demise of the workhorse running back. Like a lot of these situations, like, oh, maybe James Cook could have become the guy. Oh, maybe Mostert if it was just him. But all of, who's left? It's really just like Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon. Is there anyone else?
CMC.
Even CMC's like Dylan.
Right.
Sure. I mean, Eckler a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not much.
He's not your prototypical workhorse back, but he gets that kind of usage, or at least did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, it gets mixed in to an extent. But yeah. The list gets shorter and shorter as we continue on.
The top remaining free agents on the running back market: Ezekiel Elliott, who finishes RB22. He's out there after moving on. The Cowboys move on from him. Leonard Fournette with a top 15 finish. He's out there. And then Kareem Hunt. Would be interesting to see if he lands with a place with upside. Is there any spots here, Barry, that you'd like to see one of these guys go, or anybody at least that you think has more left in the tank than the general public kind of perceives?
Yeah, I mean, like all of them. I mean, I'll tell you that, when I was hanging with my best friend Tom Brady, him and I hanging out this weekend, just palling around with a couple of our buddies, Leonard Fournette was there as well.
Yes.
And I literally point blank asked him, like, where are you going? And he goes, honestly, I don't know. He goes, I have no idea. I mean, I would think that, I actually think in the right situation, all three of those guys could be useful. To me, I feel like, because we've seen Fournette be productive last year, obviously, so Fournette, but to me the interesting one is Kareem Hunt. And just that, he hasn't, this is a guy that won a rushing title as a rookie and then just hasn't been used that much, and it feels like that explosiveness is still there. He was behind Nick Chubb, who might be the best running back in the NFL from a pure skill standpoint, and they had quarterback issues and just wasn't a particularly good team. So I feel like in the right system, we talked about this, and it's weird because they went and got Pirine, but if Javonte Williams is more hurt than we think, which I think is a very real possibility, and Kareem Hunt went to Denver, that becomes really interesting. Or if Kamara gets suspended for a year or for much of a year and Kareem Hunt goes to New Orleans, that becomes really interesting, right? I just think Kareem Hunt in the right situation becomes really interesting.
I like Kareem Hunt. I will say
as a football player,
as a player, yes,
as a
sure.
fantasy football player.
Yes,
so we have to be clear about that.
Not sure about other aspects, but yeah, he is a guy who was efficient coming into last year, and then it just kind of fell off a cliff. I do worry a little bit about last season and his kind of the peripheral stats showing that he may be edging toward the latter half of his career, and I don't know if he profiles as a guy who's going to see. Who can even see 15 to 18 touches in a game.
The counter to that, and you might be right, by the way. You absolutely might be right. You just never know with running backs. The only counter to that is it felt like there was already bad blood in Cleveland. Like he wanted to get out last year. And so it just may have been one of those things, one of those mental things and he's not getting the playing time that he wants. And it just, just mentally, he may not have been there. He may have checked out on the team. And so, listen, you're a professional. You're still being paid a lot of money. You have to do it. But
he definitely wasn't happy. That's for sure.
There are other things that you could excuse away. It still may be right. The skills may be diminishing, but it also may be one of those things that, like in a new situation with a team where he feels appreciated and he has a role that's more suited to his skill set, maybe he's got another year left.
Ironically, I think he could go on the path that another guy on that screen went down in Leonard Fournette, where it looked like Leonard Fournette was just done. In Jacksonville, he's like a 3.8 yards per carry kind of guy, and then all of a sudden, Super Bowl winning Lenny. So I think all these guys, like any running back, the situation you want to end up in right now is Philadelphia, because Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, they are not so super entrenched. And then Rashaad Penny, despite the upside, the most likely thing is that he gets hurt. And then all of a sudden, you could have anyone slide in to be a number one running back behind the best offensive line in football.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by any of those guys winding up in Dallas, right? We don't know what Dallas is doing behind Tony Pollard. Like, I don't know if they want to go in with just Tony Pollard.
Feels like Leonard Fournette to Dallas.
Yeah, it does.
That's like a thing.
They might draft
right?
Bijan.
And they might, right.
That's very real right now.
That's the rumor, right? That they might draft Bijan, I mean, I know they like Keontae Ingram a little bit, but any one of those guys in Arizona paired with James Conner could be kind of interesting. You can sort of see that too.
How about the Bengals right now with the unclear future of Joe Mixon, and we saw P. Ryan obviously go to the market. That's kind of a sneaky one that I think a lot of people aren't onto yet.
Right, I mean,
for Hunt, maybe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for Kareem. That's a
yeah,
good spot
Kareem
for
Hunt landing spot.
Yeah,
catching.
maybe
role.
Fournette as well. Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. Before we get to the wide receiver signings over the last week, baseball season is right around the corner. So pick up your Roto-World Baseball Draft Guide. Get all the best player profiles, rankings, and projections you need to dominate your draft. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/draft guide and use Pennant25 to save 25% at checkout.
Did you guys notice what Connor did there when he said it's right around the corner? Corner, that's kind of a baseball term, the hot corner, everything like that. Really
I didn't catch that myself.
It's that kind of wordplay. It's that kind of wordplay that Kristen was like, yes, I need that for the rest of my life. I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in.
Oh, boy.
Wide receivers here, fellas.
Poor Kristen.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. So, don't know what she was thinking. So, yes, that's why she delayed. She was like, what? I didn't hear you.
She can fill back up.
All right, the Jets signed wide receiver Alan Lazard, formerly of Green Bay, of course, to a 4-year, $44 million. I believe 2 years, $22 is guaranteed in this deal. It's no secret Aaron Rodgers at some point will be a Jet. They get out in front of that move and sign his buddy in Lazard here, Barry. Lazard really known for his blocking, but did have his best season as a receiver yet last year as well.
Yeah, and I think this is a much better signing for Aaron Rodgers and, and for the Jets than I think it is fantasy-wise.
Yeah.
In Green Bay, he was the clear-cut number one wide receiver. He goes to the Jets, and he's not going to be. Now, again, there's a familiarity with Rodgers that Garrett Wilson won't have, but, just from a skill standpoint, come on, right? It's not close. So, and Rodgers is going to realize that pretty quickly, I think. So I think it's a good for Al Lazard, good for Aaron Rodgers to have a buddy there, and I think Randall Cobb is next.
He'll show up at some point. Right? The big dog, Mercedes Lewis.
Mercedes Lewis.
Jordy Nelson.
Jordy Nelson, right? Greg Jennings. Yeah, the whole gang will be there, right? Absolutely. Donald Driver.
Yeah.
Right?
Fade Elijah Moore as soon as you can, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, just
again.
Well, again, that's the other thing is that maybe you have some insight into this. We taped the thing when we did our show last week. there were rumors that he was going to go to the Jets. We thought it might happen, but it wasn't until he came out on the Pat McAfee show and said, that's my intention, is I want to play for the Jets. And so now the Packers and Jets are sort of haggling over compensation, and we don't know what that is going to be because Rodgers is under contract to the Green Bay Packers. They don't want that contract on their books, but so it'll get done at some point. But Elijah Moore, potentially a piece that goes back to the Green Bay?
I think it's more likely Corey Davis is in this deal. Yeah. They haven't cut Corey Davis yet, even though the Lazard signing, the money, the role, everything is a direct replacement. So I think it's looking like Corey Davis is almost a lock to be in this deal, and if he's not, then they will just move on from him and he'll enter the free agent market. Everything I've heard is the Jets have very little interest in giving up on players that they think can help this tight window they'll have with Rodgers. They view Elijah Moore as that. Some younger guys on defense like Jermaine Johnson, his name's been kicked around. So I think the good thing for Moore is Braxton Berrios signed with the Dolphins. Berrios ate into Moore's slot reps, those manufactured touches. So I'm not going to buy into Elijah Moore again, but I'm saying there's a more defined role that should have existed for him in the first place.
Well, sure, but counter to that is like, yes, they don't want to give up Elijah Moore, but if the Packers are like, yeah, we don't want Corey Davis's contract, we want Elijah Moore's rookie contract, and they're not going to sit there. I mean, Woody Johnson's not going to say like, wait a minute, the reason we don't have Aaron Rodgers is because you guys won't give up Elijah Moore. Give up Elijah Moore. Like,
and the Woody factor is very real.
Right,
like Joe Douglas will not. Woody owns the team, and Woody is known for getting involved in trades, going all the way back to the Brett Favre trade, which was Woody's decision, not Eric Mangini's. So history repeats itself.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just saying, I don't think I understand that the desire is not to move on from Elijah Moore if you're the Jets, but they also may not have a choice. So I think there's a non-zero chance that Elijah Moore goes to the Packers in a deal.
Yeah, there's definitely a non-zero.
Yeah.
Is it probably unlikely? Probably, but definitely a non-zero.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 5% or 50%. My guess is it's closer to 5%.
Yep, I would say so.
There's a non-zero chance, and as one source said to me at the combine, my nipples are hard for Alan Lazard. They actually aren't now that he's on the Jets.
Dead may never die.
But I just,
gotta get to the real
you don't
season
often get a chance to say the words nipples on streaming networks.
Yeah.
Every single week he scores. Do you get to drop that one in during the season?
We need a meme.
Probably about
2,000%.
Yeah, at least it'll happen a handful of times. Yeah. So, all right, another big one here. The Patriots. Jacoby Myers goes out the door. They bring in JuJu Smith-Schuster, basically somebody that'll play the same exact role. Similar contract, too. 3-year, $25.5 million contract for JuJu here, Denny. I mean, let's be real right now. There are a lot of targets on the table in Bill O'Brien's Patriots offense.
There are, and he's going to have to be, JuJu's going to have to be a target hog if he's going to get there for fantasy, if he's going to be a wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. He had 2 downfield targets all of last year in the Chiefs offense.
20-plus yards?
Of 20-plus yards, okay? So the days of him making plays downfield are absolutely over. I know there was some question in Kansas City, will he get back to that? The answer was absolutely not. He's 84th out of 88 qualified wide receivers in average depth of target, over the past 3 seasons combined, including again with Patrick Mahomes. So I just it's a downgrade for offensive environment here, but there are a lot of targets open. So I'm not completely dismissing JuJu.
22% target share for Jacoby Myers last year. 56% of those targets came from the slot. So it is one of those things. It's like there is the opportunity for him to be a usable asset in PPR, the way that Jacoby Myers was. But again, we don't expect JuJu to be a big touchdown scorer. Health is more of an issue with JuJu than Jacoby Myers was. And I think Jacoby Myers, if JuJu wasn't there and Jacoby Myers were still on the Patriots, Jacoby Myers maybe is a top 50 wide receiver. He's probably getting drafted somewhere in that 40 to 50 range. And that feels right for JuJu as well. JuJu probably a little bit better player than Jacoby Myers, but also has more injury concerns than Jacoby does. So feels like it's a better NFL signing than it is a fantasy signing. I'm buying a Mac Jones bounce back as an NFL quarterback. I don't think he's a fantasy relevant one, but I'll buy. I'm not out on Mac Jones as an NFL quarterback yet. I think Bill O'Brien being there will certainly help, but it's right. It's not going to be an explosive offense. It's going to be a Patriots offense, right? It's going to be running heavy, and it's Ramondre Stevenson, and it's going to be slow paced and play good defense. And
the one thing is that JuJu Smith-Schuster somehow just turned 26.
That's
feels
amazing.
like he's 50 years old.
20-year-old,
He's been around for so long.
20-year-old rookie.
Yeah. So I think that is the one thing that maybe there's still a hope he can get back, that explosion that he had those first couple of years in Pittsburgh. But at the same time, like, he just had a B- season with Patrick Mahomes and now goes to a much less friendlier environment, to your point. But wouldn't entirely give up on that guy coming back potentially just because he's so young.
Yeah, I'm not out on him as an NFL player, but just as a consistent fantasy relevant guy. Again, I don't think the touchdowns are going to be there. So what you're really banking on is volume in PPR, and so you're hopeful there. But again, it's a slow-paced offense that doesn't throw a ton. And I will tell you, talking to my Kansas City sources when I was at the Combine, they said, basically, like, we love JuJu, but one of the concerns is like, we don't think he can make it through a 17-game season.
Really?
You know what I mean? Like, and by the way, he didn't last year, and he, there's just throughout his career, he has struggled with health, and so that's right. Like, if you can't pop in Kansas City, like, it's hard to see him going, being better than he was last year. On a points per game basis, he was wide receiver 36 last year with the Chiefs. Wide receiver 27. So even if you say, like, total points, like, with Mahomes, he was barely a top 30 wide receiver.
Feels like there's going to be a lot of games of 6 receptions for 58 yards, no touchdowns.
Yes. And that last part is what matters for him, ultimately.
Yeah. Right.
It's a big difference.
By the way, 6 for 58, that's Jacoby Myers.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, like, 5 for 77. It's Jacoby Myers, like, which is fine.
You take it in your wide receiver 3 spot.
Yeah.
You just plug him in, get 11 points, whatever.
Yeah, fine.
Yep.
It's great. Whatever. But nothing that you're like, woohoo.
I-95.
You're not leaving your draft going, yeah, man, I got JuJu Smith.
You don't feel good about that.
No.
Jay, a move with upside here. The Cowboys trade for Brandin Cooks. They don't really give up much of anything. A 2023 fifth-round pick, 2024 sixth-round pick. We know the salary, what was involved with Cooks, and he wanted out of Houston. He was very vocal about that last year. The Cowboys needed that third wide receiver to play with CD and Gallup. This probably maybe even longer run helps CD because they like playing him in the slot primarily, and Cooks can play inside-outside. But individually, what do you make of Cooks and his upside in Dallas?
I mean, I think it's a little bit capped just because of the presence of those 3 guys, because you had in Dalton Schultz as well, and there's just not he's not going to get the usage that he's gotten at his absolute peak, but at the same, I think it's a better football move than a fantasy move. I'd be a little bit concerned about Michael Gallup, who just never looked right last season. He was not the same guy. I mean, now he's another year removed from the ACL, so maybe he looks better. But I mean, it's a crowded team as well. If there's going to be more Pollard in the passing game, it's just hard to see how Cooks has a pathway to being elite.
He goes from having a 24% target share in Houston over his last 3 years to where he's going to have a much smaller target share, but better quarterback, more efficient offense. And I don't see a scenario. I don't think it would be shocking if he leapfrogs Michael Gallup to be the number 2. I actually think they're bringing him in to be the number 2.
That's what I thought,
One of the things I wrote in my Combine column is that my sources from Dallas were saying to me, like, they want to make a splash on offense. And we can talk about whether this was a splash or a drip, or just, a little trickle, like more of a pebble than a big rock going into a pond. But the fact of the matter is Brandin Cooks is a big name player. Like, he's a guy that's had multiple 1,000-yard receiving, with bad quarterback play, really inconsistent quarterback play, but he's always produced 6 of his 9 years in the NFL. He's had over 1,000 different yards, including with 4 different teams. And so, I think, I agree, it's a good NFL move for Dak, for his fantasy value, for the Cowboys. I think it helps CD as well, but I think Brandin Cooks is probably about where he was. Like, last year, he was wide receiver 37 in points per game. Sounds about right. Like, he's in that wide receiver 3-4 range where, again, less target share, but better quarterback, better offense.
Yep. So I misspoke. Dalton Schultz obviously signed with the Texans yesterday, but there's just not that many targets to go around. Also, Brandin Cooks, he's coming up on 10 years in the league now as well. So he is, he's still 29 years old. He's still going to be able to produce, but this is going to be CD Lamb's offense.
And Dallas will draft a tight end pretty early. So those targets that you mentioned, they're going just to a different name. Yep. It doesn't matter.
It was super weird, but one of the rumors I heard was they're going to draft Bijan Robinson and then convert him to tight end. Because they need a tight end, but Jerry really wants Bijan. So there you go. That's a win-win for everyone.
That's what we do on this show. We meet in the middle all the time.
There you go.
Denny,
That's not happening. I'm just teasing.
Last notable one here, the Panthers signed Adam Thielen, 3-year, $25 million contract, $14 million in guarantees. We know Carolina, after trading DJ Moore in the move to go up to number 1, there's a big hole in targets at wide receiver for this team, and now Thielen's a veteran that can fill that.
I guess he is.
Well, they're expecting that.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I guess even though, he's dropped off in pretty much every category over the past 2 or 3 seasons, Thielen should be considered the wide receiver 1 in this offense right now. I know the LaVisca Chenault truthers on Twitter. I'm sorry, guys. I do want to apologize. I know you're probably.
Is it you said truthers, like there's plural? Isn't it just Peter Overzet at this point?
No. Pete has an army. Pete has an army.
I think it's a bunch of bots. Listen, I know Peter fairly well. I think it is a bunch of bots.
It could be, but there are real flesh and blood people who believe in LaVisca Chenault, and I don't want to.
Peter Overzet with a bunch of different IDs is what it is. That's what it is.
Well, and so yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, I guess Thielen is the guy. He's going to play from the slot again like he did in Minnesota. I think that definitely dings Chenault. Marshall had some good slot usage last year. But, yeah, I mean, right now, let's see what they do in the draft. I guess Thielen is their wide receiver.
Connor, if it's Stroud or Young or Richardson, how does that impact Chenault and Thielen?
Well, I think if it's Stroud, you love it because of his pocket presence and timing, and Thielen his game is based on timing in his routes. So the ball will always be there. Stroud, coming out of Ohio State, he understands how to lean on like a number 1 wide receiver in the offense. He did it with Jackson Smith and Jigba 2 years ago, Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. So I think if it's Stroud, and a lot of people think it will be Stroud, there's a lot of upside there with Thielen because Stroud's ready to roll and ready to play.
I actually think Thielen's kind of a sleeper here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, just in these. Here's the thing. He is going to be left for dead in drafts. Like no one. Panthers. He is. But to your point, I think even if LaVisca Chenault becomes a thing, LaVisca Chenault is not a volume guy. He's a gadget guy. They'll use him in different ways, and he could be a poor man's Kadarius Toney. Yeah. What we saw, moments, in flashes in Kansas City last year for Toney. So you could see that with Chenault, but give me Thielen over Jacoby Myers or JuJu Smith-Schuster. In terms of a guy that we were talking 6 for 70. I guess my point is that I think while Thielen dropped off last year, there's no question, and it's a much worse environment. The fact is I just don't think it's going to I think his ADP will drop much further than his fantasy value because this is a guy that was, a couple of years ago, a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, and as recently as 2 years ago was a top 20 wide receiver opposite Justin Jefferson. And so I think that as the number 1 guy and as kind of a safety valve for whoever the rookie quarterback is,
Could be built-in volume.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he's much more of a floor play than an upside play. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, if you're in that range where you're looking for a wide receiver 3 and you're in a PPR league, you're in a 12-team PPR league where you're just I need 12 to 14 points every week. I think 6 for 77 is not out of the question for him every single week.
Adam Thielen is Brandin Cooks on the Texans. Effectively, I think he's going to be that type of production.
But the quarterback will be better.
Very different wide receiver.
Different, but in terms of just established big name wide receiver, veteran on a bad team, and kind of chugs along and gets you what you need.
Just a volume-based wide receiver 3 who I bet you averages double-digit fantasy points.
You could do worse. You could do worse.
That's listen, I make that argument to my wife all the time. You could do worse. You have done worse. Come on.
All right, other notable wide receiver free agency signings here. Paris Campbell signs a 1-year deal.
Was that part of the conversation with Kristen, by the way? Was that
That's been my selling point from day one.
Right, you could do worse.
You could definitely.
Yeah.
You could
we
do
were
worse.
friends for 5 years before we ever dated, so that was my line. Okay, 5 years have gone by. You've seen that you could do worse.
Right.
Let's give this a shot.
So that's fascinating to me. You were in the friend zone for 5 years.
Well, we were both with other people, too.
I think no.
Friend zone's a little
don't disrupt. No, I've got a.
But go with it. Run with it.
No.
Yes.
I figured this out.
You have a good bit ready. I'm
fine.
ready for it.
I figured this out. That's fine. So Kristen had you in the friend zone, and so you're just sitting there patiently waiting. Well, she's going after. You're going out with D-bag after D-bag.
That's
just
fair.
a bunch of losers, guys that aren't right for her. You're just sitting there pining away.
Yeah.
Hopefully Kristen will notice me. I'm just sitting over here with my Jets playbook, just trying to
analyzing the draft. Great selling point for a career.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Just, nerding out on, 40 times and 3-cone times and
Connor's CJ Stroud, very high floor.
There we go. I'll take
Kristen's
that
been through Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
Pro ready?
Yeah.
Some would say I'm pro ready.
Is it CJ Stroud? Is it more like Mike White? Bided his time.
Come on.
Bided his time. Finally got a shot. Made the most of his moment.
Yep.
Got paid.
Am I going to get hurt, though, really soon? Is Matt Milano going to break me in half at some point? I'm a little nervous right now. Yeah. Is that why Denny's here? Are you sending Denny on a blitz?
I'm sorry to report.
A blindside blitz?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what goes on with you and
Is
Kristen.
Lawrence hiding somewhere?
I don't know. if there's some aggression there, I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. But this is a happy time. You guys got engaged. This is great. You're the poster boy. Like, you got out of the friend zone, and then 4 years.
I'm a sign of hope.
You're a sign of hope. You're a beacon of
true.
hope. Like, if you're stuck in a friend zone out there, look at Connor Rogers.
He beat it. Who beat the friend zone?
Who beat the? Like it took him 9 years. 5 years of friend zone and then 4 years of dating where Krista was sort of like, maybe someone else will come along, maybe someone comes along. But literally, like, she got there to a decade.
She got to her 30s and was like, okay,
she's like, all right, you know what? Screw it. Fine.
You're,
you know what?
It's
fine. Dave Montgomery, come on down.
There is.
He's a grinder.
I've hated you for 5 years, but you just keep showing up.
You keep showing up. You don't get hurt. It's fine. Like, it's fine. Are you efficient? No, but you know what? I know I can count on you.
You're going to get there.
You're going to get there.
Yes.
So there you go.
It's a great story of hope.
Yeah,
it really
Kyle Pitts can be a tight end once.
Yes, thrilling.
Like,
Oh, man.
Tell me I'm wrong. No one in my ear is arguing with me, by the way. No. They all agree with
me.
me.
I got turned off a long time ago.
Yeah.
So,
Just rip the cord. Yeah, as Steven says, want no part of this. So that leads to a smooth transition to other notable. How about Paris Campbell, huh? Signed a 1-year deal, $4.7 million deal with the Giants. Darius Slayton goes back to the Giants. That was a little surprise. 2-year, $12 million deal with Big Blue. Sterling Shepard also back with the Giants. So the Giants keep Slayton, keep Shepard, add Paris Campbell. I'm sure they'll look to the draft as well. Deontay Hardy signs a 2-year deal, almost up to $10 million with the Bills. Probably an Isaiah McKenzie replacement there. And Mack Hollins, who had some monster weeks last year, gets a 1-year, $2.5 million deal with the Falcons.
To me, Mack Hollins is the interesting one. I'm not convinced all those guys make the Giants, by the way. I mean, they've got a lot of guys there.
Isaiah Hodgins is still there. He might be the best of all of them.
Richard
Shepard never
James,
plays.
they got a lot. I think they're kind of wide receiver by committee, and I'm not convinced all those guys make the team. I think still more movement to come for the New York Giants as well. But Mack Hollins was interesting to me. Mack Hollins is somebody that we've always sort of liked. He's a deep threat. He's had some real nice moments in Las Vegas the last 2 years, or at least last year, I should say. He had some moments in Miami as well. Sort of kind of bounced around. But as you think about Atlanta, I'm not convinced Desmond Ridder is definitely the day one starter. I think it's going to be a competition between him and Taylor Heineke. Yeah. And Taylor Heineke definitely has a lot of F it. Somebody's down there somewhere. Mack Hollins. No, I'm serious. Mack Hollins is a great signing for Taylor Heineke. I don't know about Desmond Ridder yet, but I think that he would I could see a Heineke to Mack Hollins connection.
I could see it.
And I think Mack Hollins becomes kind of an interesting late round flyer in best ball, especially.
Just hopefully they throw the ball more. The Falcons were so stubbornly run heavy. And, so if we're going to get targets for Drake London, if we're going to get targets for Kyle Pitts, I don't know where Mack Hollins, figures in there except for maybe the occasional deep ball. And that's really only if Heineke's in there. I think Ridder is too conservative of a passer to really target a guy like Hollins on those
you
routes.
have to wonder. I mean, by the way, Heineke got signed to real money.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
2 years, 20 mil, up to 20 mil.
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
mil.
For a backup, especially with his sort of resume, that was kind of eye-opening money. I think for Heineke more than Washington wanted him back, but they certainly didn't think that was his market. And so I wonder if the reason they were so run heavy last year and so conservative is that Arthur Smith sort of looked at what he had, and I've got Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder, who was a 5th-round pick last year?
Fourth or
fifth. But Ridder was supposed to go earlier and then just kept dropping and dropping and dropping, and so NFL talent evaluators saw something in Ridder or didn't see something in Ridder that we maybe thought was there, and so Smith may have said, hey, our best chance at winning games is grinding this out on the ground, and so maybe they see something in Heineke where they can be a little bit more open up, and even if it is still run heavy, setting up play action, where you're doing the run. Anyway, I just thought Mack Hollins is probably, again, a better NFL signing than he is a fantasy relevant one, barring an injury, but I do think he's interesting in a deeper league, especially if Heineke's under center. I didn't have much to choose from there. By the way, I had to pick an interesting one on that full screen, and that's what I chose. So, so sue me.
Yeah, the notable remaining free agents.
It's you pick what's given in front of you. You're like, fine.
She's gonna love this show. She does watch.
Does she?
Loyal watcher of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
God bless you, Kristen.
Yeah,
You know what?
I don't know how she does it.
I tell her
all the time, you don't have to do this.
No. Listen, there's a lot of things that I don't understand how Kristen does, but
watching the show
is on the list.
It's up there. Yeah, she goes to work and puts on the show when we were live on Peacock.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
We love her.
Diabolical, more so.
Would you guys like to get married here at the set? I can make that happen.
Yeah, I don't know if she's going to agree to that, honestly. I'll sell it. You could do the what is it called?
I can be the officiant.
Yeah, officiant.
I have married 2 different couples in my life. I have become an officiant.
People
I'm really
don't know
good at
it's
it.
a little side hobby of yours.
I'm pretty good at it, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Rave reviews.
Just constantly going up to people in the halls. Want me to marry you?
Yes.
Want me to marry you?
How about me?
It's something that I've done. I've done it multiple times now. Both couples still together, so I'm 2 for 2.
Oh, that's good.
Just saying, something to think about.
You saw the notable remaining free agents there. Some big names. Odell Beckham on that list. Mecole Hardman. Chosen Anderson. Also formerly known as Robbie Anderson. Jarvis Landry. DJ Chark. I think next week, guys, we'll have, unless this market drags out even longer, but obviously Odell would be big news whenever we get that news.
Yeah,
Big-ish. Bigger because of the name, but still.
He's 31 years old, coming off a big injury. I mean, he was
you're
excellent on the Rams, but certainly the hype outweighs his likely production. But yeah, there'll be some interesting.
The workout videos, though, are amazing. Come on, you got to hand it to him. Yeah, it's the one hand.
The guy knows how to market.
So many.
We've been talking about Odell in the free agent market for quite some time.
Yeah, 3 years. Most of the past 3 years.
All right, before we get to the quarterbacks here, download the Roto-World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today.
All for free.
All for free. Quarterbacks, guys. Baker Mayfield's second appearance of the show. He caught a drive-by stray from Jay to kick things off. So welcome back to the show. Baker Mayfield, a 1-year, $8.5 million contract, up to $8.5 million contract. With the Bucs. Denny, I mean, he has still a decent supporting cast here with the Bucs. They've kept their wide receivers. We know the offensive line has some significant questions, but there are worse places for Baker Mayfield to land despite Jay running the bus over the guy and then backing it up over him.
Well, if you want someone to get the bus off of Baker, I'm the wrong guy. I talked on the Roto-World football show last week about how bad Baker Mayfield was last year, not just with the Panthers, but he went to L.A. and he was a little better, but he was still like bottom third in every conceivable category. So I don't see him being able to hold on to this starting job, even with the surrounding weapons. And who knows? I mean, is Mike Evans going to be on this roster in week 1? I don't know. I mean, they could be dealing, trying to deal guys for rebuilding purposes. So I think Baker is probably going to start. Is he going to hold the job? I don't think so. I think Trask is eventually.
I think we can be quick here with this section overall quarterbacks. I'll just really say I think it's about as good a landing spot for Baker's career as could have happened because again, at least at the moment, Godwin and Evans are there. He's somebody that has been good in the NFL at some points in his career. Obviously, it hasn't been that recently. But yeah, not fantasy relevant. Like even if he gets the job and remains, he doesn't run. We don't expect this to be, an explosive offense. He's a low-end QB2 that in the right matchup you might use in a bye week.
Barry, your Commanders signed Jacoby Brissett to a 1-year, $10 million contract. We know they've said they'd like to see what Sam Howell has. We got to see Sam Howell at the end of last year. So Commanders training camp officially will enter the Brissett-Howell competition.
Yeah, and Howell's going to be the guy, I think. But I thought this was a good signing by the Commanders, but no fantasy relevancy. I don't think either guy is going to be fantasy relevant.
Do you think Ron Rivera is the kind of coach that will lean toward the veteran in Brissett and want to start him over Howell? I feel that feels like it's right to me.
Right. Also, Brissett was really good last year.
He was good.
You're 100%
Part of the
Sounds a little weird.
What's interesting here is just take it to more of an NFL conversation, right? Is that the expectation is that the Commanders are going to be sold. Thank God. Soon, right? There's been reports that the Snyders have actually cleared out the facility, and that in your steering news, Magic Johnson has joined one of the the Josh Harris bid, and that this sale could happen sooner than later. And so the question becomes, if like a new owner comes in, basically probably says to Ron Rivera, "You got 1 year." He got signed to a 4-year deal. This is year 4. It's been Ron Rivera's had to deal with a lot of different things that most head coaches should never have to deal with. But you wonder if Ron Rivera's feels like his job's on the line. I think it depends on what if the new owner says hey, Ron, play the rookie, it's fine, here's an extension, we don't want you to be a lame duck coach, then okay. But if it's sort of a prove it year for Rivera, then you feel like you've got a better chance to win with Brissett.
By most advanced stats, last year, Jacoby Brissett was better than Aaron Rodgers. Jacoby Brissett had a really, really good season.
He really did. Underrated season.
He did. Yeah. No, I thought it was a really good signing by the Commanders, unless you're thinking of, like, look, they should either see what they have in Sam Howell this year, and if they don't have, Graham Barfield put this out on Twitter, and I thought this was smart, saying, like, see what you have in Sam Howell. And either you've either got something, and wow, now you've got a rookie on a 5th-year deal or on a round 5 deal that you maximize that contract for the next couple of years, or if you don't have anything in Sam Howell, you're going to be awful, and then you finally have a top 10 pick next year,
and a great
quarterback
class. It's going to be a great quarterback
and
class.
A great quarterback class.
Yeah.
And the problem with Jacoby Brissett is Jacoby Brissett's almost too good. Like, because Jacoby Brissett's good enough to get you to 7 or 8 wins and get you in the middle of the pack once again, which is where they pick again this year.
Yep.
The Commanders have constantly been good enough to, like, not be able to pick a franchise quarterback, but bad enough that they, that they can't get to the playoffs.
The rest of the roster's too good, though, whatever happens.
Defense,
like, it's
yes.
not.
Right, it's a really good defense. They have good skill players, like, McLaurin and Dotson and Samuel. And
and an NFC that just doesn't scare you. They kind of are the kings of treading water right now, and which way are they going to go?
Yeah, they're in purgatory. And I do think that Brissett will start more games than Howell this year. That would be my bet.
One more here, guys.
But I don't know that either guy has fantasy value. It's more
Probably
of an
not.
NFL discussion.
And speaking of no fantasy value, we talked about it before. Andy Dalton goes to the Panthers. Interesting, 2-year contract up to $11 million, $8 million in guarantees. Good deal for Dalton at this stage of his career. I think backing up a rookie in an offense that you kind of shrug, you're not really going to be crazy over. But Denny, it does give them some veteran stability in that room.
Well, hopefully they don't do what the Matt Nagy Bears did and start Andy Dalton over their incoming rookie, like Andy Dalton started over Justin Fields, and they said he is the QB1, and with a famous social media post that we will never forget. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But Andy Dalton actually wasn't bad last year in New Orleans. He was the middle of the road in a lot of advanced stats, and you could do worse as a backup for sure.
All right, guys, we're going to move on to tight ends here. Pretty lackluster quarterback movement over the last week. Tight ends, there has been some movement, though, and that starts with Dalton Schultz going to the Texans. Obviously had some big years for the Cowboys, played on the franchise tag last year. Signs a 1-year deal up to $9 million this year with the Texans. And an offense that we talked about, Barry, there are targets in this offense for whatever rookie ends up under center.
Texans last year, 7th in tight end targets. They were 6th in red zone targets, 2 tight ends. Like, we saw moments there. Honestly, it's because they're tight end that they don't have the number 1 overall pick, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, he caught the touchdown. Akins caught the touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's some targets here. Look, last year, Dalton Schultz was tight end 10. He was tight end 9 on a points per game basis, and that feels right to me. Yeah. Like he's a low end tight end 1, and he's solid, know when you target, but if you kind of blow off tight end early and you leave your draft with Schultz as your number 1 tight end, I think you're fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the Texans' offense overall, like if they presumably get one of Stroud or Young, all of a sudden, offensive line with Mason and Tunsil is not a disaster. We'll see what we get out of John Mechie. Nico Collins is potentially fine as a number 2. Like, the offense might be a lot more competent than in years past.
If you're not an elite tight end like a Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, you need 2 things: massive route volume and target volume. I think Schultz can walk into that, both of those things, in probably what will be an improved Houston offense. So I think for PPR purposes, he could be kind of sneaky, not inspiring, but sneaky.
Yeah. I agree with that. We'll see. I feel like they're not done in the wide receiver room. Like, probably I feel like it's whether it's a draft pick or some of the notable free agents, and waiting for some other. Maybe there's a post-June 1st cut or something like that. But it feels like they'll get somebody on the cheap.
Another 1-year deal here. The Patriots send out Jonnu Smith to the Falcons. Jay, they bring in Mike Gesicki, a true big-bodied slot receiver playing tight end, enters New England's offense. Is this how they kind of operate? They always have a player like this in their offense.
Very Patriots-y move, kind of annoying with Hunter Henry, and just you don't get that kind of clarity, because I think that if it was just one guy, then there would be some fantasy appeal. But, I mean, it's just going to be murky again and not particularly desirable. And also just an offense I think is pretty capped in terms of its ceiling, even though we think Mac Jones is going to be better. There's just never going to be, with this current roster, I think a really high-flying offense with passing yards and touchdowns just flying around for everyone.
Guys, we couldn't close out this show, as you mentioned last week. You were with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady and friends.
Some people's calling it Tom Brady was with me.
This is true.
I'm
Tom
not
Brady
one
and
of
friends
those
were with
people.
you.
Some people are saying that, not me. Certainly not.
It
me.
was
No, he might be
maybe
FF
your
Tom
event.
Brady. So this is Fournette calling a play, and this is Tom Brady. Break this down for me, Connor. What are my draft prospects? I did not expect
It
this
looks
to
like
happen.
Brady's telling you what route to run.
He's telling me
Gronk's
not to let Gronk get me off the line.
Gronk with no press, no backpedal, and very mossing Gronk.
I thought he was going to hit you for a second.
And the Gronk spike on Gronk. And hear the crowd pop. The crowd pop on that. That was kind of like your heel turn.
Right. Here's the play from a different angle as well. So Gronk is calling the play, but ultimately what's happening here is Fournette's designing the play. He's like, I want you to do an up and back on that. And then Brady's like, go to Gronk. And then Brady says to me, don't let him jam you off the line. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I got it. And so I fake out the cameraman right there.
That's a quick,
push him off.
That's
there
a quick
you go.
twitch.
Probably shouldn't have worn an Untuck It shirt, candidly. But break it down, Connor. What are my draft prospects?
You look real smooth off the line of scrimmage. Some are calling you a Devontae Adams clone with that release package. Excellent at the catch point. You might be the next tight end for the Patriots looking at that.
Listen, I mean, I'm just saying, Tom Brady threw up a 50-50 ball between me and Gronk, and I came down with it.
Some are saying Tom Brady is a Matthew Berry merchant of receiving.
Well, what about the changing of the speeds right here? Like
the double move.
The double move. Well, and then the push off, the ref didn't call that. Easily could have been a little OPI there, but
reminds me of Mercedes Lewis.
Yeah, you're the new big dog. Yes, very Mercedes. I would comp you Mercedes Lewis, Devontae Adams hybrid.
Yes,
is what I would say. Is what I go.
That's fair,
right, Denny?
That's fair.
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on.
I mean, my efficiency, right?
And the double clutch catch.
It makes me wonder when Tom comes back this year, probably to the Dolphins at some point. And he calls Edelman, he calls Gronk, he calls Fournette, and he calls Matthew Berry. And he calls those three. It gets out on news, and everybody's like,
"We need you."
He starts adding you. When is he calling Matthew Berry?
Yeah, I mean,
1 year
it's a
deal.
question. It's a 1 year prove it deal. I'm fine.
Mike McDaniel will draw something up for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
Just manufacture the touches for me.
Yes.
I'm
sweet.
You want Coach of the Year, Mike McDaniel?
Right.
Yes, we're going to challenge.
Yeah, no, exactly right. No, listen, Tom said, let's stay in touch, and so I gave my number to one of his people to give to one of his people, and so we'll see. No, listen, honestly, thank you to Autograph. It was a great event. And so it was part of the Autograph, the Huddle experience with Leonard Fournette, Gronk, and of course Tom Brady, and I got to be the MC along with Buster Scher, who was also there. So it was an absolute amazing event. So thank you, Tom, for your graciousness, and to the Autograph family. Thank you to all of you guys. Listen, it's closing time. We'll be back next week. Denny Carter, Thank you. Nice job. Well done.
Special guest.
You guys.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.